I do not have confidence Miami is beating Notre Dame this weekend. How can they do it, though? What would it all mean? Plus, can Alabama be shocked by Florida State? That and more on today's show.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest and craziest sport on planet Earth. Alabama, Florida State, reaction to the Boise State, Nebraska games, all on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. A guy who knows a thing or two about Game Time, Alex Dono over of Locked On Canes and Locked On ACC fame. I can't feel good because of the coaching matchup here. I might still be riding a little bit too high, perhaps, on Marcus Freeman, but I watched him with a good roster. Don't get me wrong, last year. I watched him get the absolute most out of that team through that playoff run. He was so good situationally. I think that's what this comes down to week one. I don't think they're going into Hard Rock Stadium and blowing them out, Dono, but I think this looks a lot like Notre Dame's first game last year against Texas A&M. Hard fought, 4-quarter battle. Eventually one team comes out on top. I'm taking Notre Dame. I don't know that the offenses start guns blazing here, so I'll go 24-21. I like Notre Dame to win.
Well, I think Miami fans will hope that it looks more like Notre Dame's meeting with Northern Illinois than the Texas A&M opener last year. But listen, I think the recipe for success for Miami, I think it's got to follow this formula. Carson Beck, who has had a really good offseason, by the way. Like, I can't emphasize that enough, and it's not just me. I know internally there's a lot of excitement for the way that he's performed in training camp for the last month and a half or so. He has to have I think the most important thing is a poised performance, because I'm with you on the low scoring thing. My final score prediction is very similar to yours. I have Miami edging it out, probably 23-20, 24-21, something like that. But I think, Carson Beck needs to be poised and make, fewer mistakes than his counterpart, CJ Carr, who is a redshirt freshman, first-time starter. I mean, listen, Notre Dame will try, I think, to keep it out of his hands as much as possible by successfully running the football. So that's another part of the formula, right? Carson Beck has to be sharp and poised on the Miami side. Miami's rushing defense has to step up. I believe in Miami's defensive line. This is, if you look at the running backs they're going up against, probably in that regard, the toughest matchup they're going to have all season long. But I do believe in what Miami offers on that side. So they really, really have to step up. And also the front seven, you need to, and there's no shutting down Love and Price. They're going to get something in this game. Even if they don't play that great, they're still going to pick up. They're still going to combine for over 100 yards, I believe. But I think you need to limit Notre Dame's rushing game enough that you can get your star defensive ends, your pass rushers like Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor into the backfield and make CJ Carr uncomfortable. So I have no doubt that he is talented. I get that, but it's his first career start in, what should be a hostile environment. I mean, the last time Notre Dame came to mind, I know people make their jokes about Miami attendance and stuff, but should be a great crowd and a lively crowd for this one, and put CJ Carr in as much pressure as possible. So to me, that's the recipe for success for Miami. And I know, the coaching thing, I get, like, Marcus Freeman already shown us tremendous coaching chops. People have their questions about Mario Cristobal. I know Cristobal, he is self-aware of some of those previous, blooper reel mistakes. And I know he's really made it a mission to collaborate more and have different protocol in crunch time. So hopefully, if it is a crunch time type of game, we avoid from the Miami side the crucial mistakes.
Yeah, and my biggest key for each team in this matchup, Dono, you touched on both of them a little bit there. For Miami, it's stop the run, because we have seen with this Notre Dame team with Mike Denbrock as the offensive coordinator, they will run the ball down your throat until the game ends, and you look up and go, we didn't score as many points as Notre Dame did, even though they were just handing the ball off all the time. But this is no worse than the second best running back tandem in all of college football. You've got a first-time starting quarterback in CJ Carr on the road. Flip side for Notre Dame, they've got to find a way to get him to settle in. You're right, he doesn't have to be great. I frankly, Dono, if Notre Dame's offensive line is expected to be one of the 3 best, do not be shocked if they win the Joe Moore Award when the season comes to a close, because they're really good. They let starters from last year's unit go in the portal because guys who they were behind on the depth chart are now healthy. That's where this O-line was, and it was the strength of their team as they were, eventually in a one-possession game in the national title bout with Ohio State. But you do need a couple of timely throws, and I think early in this game, you've got to find a way to slow things down for CJ Carr. You can't have him get sped up. You can't have him get rattled. Doesn't matter how talented you are. When it's your first start, you're going to have some jitters. You're going to have some nerves. You're going to be seeing things and feeling things out there on the field, physically and mentally, for the very first time. So I think whichever team executes that key better. CJ Carr might only need to go for 185 yards and a touchdown through the air in this game, but it's avoiding the big mistakes. It's being good in a couple of situational spots that I think is crucial for Notre Dame to go on the road and get this win.
I'll add something else to the Miami side that I didn't bring up before. I also think Miami running the football is a must in this game. And I think that's an area where, and again, I expect Notre Dame to be able to run. It's just a question, how much can Miami limit them on defense? But on the flip side, I think Miami can run the football even in this matchup. This is, one of the best defensive lines, probably the best they'll face all year, because Miami doesn't have Clemson on the regular season schedule. I think has the best D-line in the country. Notre Dame's is very good, but I do believe in Miami's offensive line, especially running behind the right side with Francis Mauigoa and Inez Cooper at right tackle and right guard, respectively. And, I think maybe Miami's running backs feel like they're not getting talked about maybe enough compared to Love and Price on the Notre Dame side, because Mark Fletcher and Jordan Lyle both had really good seasons last year, along with Damian Martinez, who's now in the NFL. Actually just got released from the Seahawks. But
nope, they added him back to the practice squad.
They did? Okay, thank you.
Back on the practice squad for my Seahawks.
So he is in the NFL then. And Miami also, in addition to Fletcher and Lyle, they added a transfer, Shamar Brown from North Dakota State, who has had a really good training camp. So I think Miami can have success on the ground, and that could be another difference, especially if Carson Beck is able to hit a couple of timely big throws. Miami's going to need to be able to run the football to make his life easier as well. So that to me is non-negotiable. Miami's got to be able to run the ball.
Really quick to wrap this first segment, Dono, if Miami loses, where does that leave things, sentiment-wise for the Hurricane fan base?
I mean, a big part of it depends on how they lose. If it's a blowout, then there's going to be a lot of frustration bubbling up. Like, hey, they'll come after people like me for hyping up training camp and like, were you telling lies to us all off season?
You're gaslighting them, Dono.
Yeah, they'll start to get a little restless. With Cristobal, hey, this was an opportunity for a big game. I will say though that even if Miami loses a really close competitive game, there's going to be a ton of disappointment. Like, the fans won't be calling for anybody's head, but I think, Spencer, it's reached a point where, Miami's blue chip ratio is excellent in terms of the talent that they have on the team. Cristobal has done a great job for 3 consecutive recruiting classes and build in the trenches. So even if Miami does lose a close one, obviously fans wouldn't be nearly as upset about that, but I think there will be disappointment because I think there's now such an expectation for what this roster can go do. And also Miami fans, especially the older ones, really hate Notre Dame because that used to be a bitter annual rivalry.
Once upon a time.
So there's a lot of hard feelings there with like the over 35 crowd. If Miami gets blown out, it'll feel like a catastrophe. They lose a close game, there's going to be disappointment. If they win, there's going to be parties all down South Beach and Coral Gables.
It sounds like something I would like to be a part of, whether I'm pulling for Miami or not. I've got Notre Dame winning. He's got Miami winning. He is Alex Dono of Locked On Canes and Locked On ACC. Great, as always. I want to believe in Florida. I'm just kidding. I don't want to believe in Florida State. Alabama's rolling them this weekend. First, this episode brought to you by Game Time. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets to games can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. We've all been there. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. That's my favorite part. What you see is what you pay. I've used Game Time a couple of times myself to go to events, and guess what? The experience has been great. I've known exactly what I was paying. I knew what to expect. I got a great deal. I got the tickets delivered right to my phone. Everything you want from a ticketing app that you might not get other places, Game Time delivers for you, which is why you should go check them out. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Locked On College, all one word, all caps, for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Florida State is at home. Mike Norvell would love to have a win. They've got a better quarterback situation with Thomas Castellanos. They've got 2 new coordinators down there in Tallahassee. And guess what? I don't care. Alabama wins and covers. Brian Smith of Locked On Seminoles is here. 13.5 is the point spread according to our friends at FanDuel. Brian, are you going to try and talk me out of my confidence in Alabama's ability to just crush Florida State here? Because I'm further down on the Seminoles than the odds market.
I don't think I'm against you given the points, but I think it'll be close for a while. But Florida State is trying to change their culture and display the right players. That is not a fast process, and it's not one that's usually lucrative against the Tide. So long-term, good move. Short-term, probably not. It's kind of like hitting a pitching wedge off the tee. So it's just not good.
I mean, it's safe. You know, if I hit pitching wedge off every tee, actually, that's not true. I play from the back tee, so I'd actually miss a decent number of fairways because it's more than 140 yards away to reach the fairway sometimes. But I get the point that you're making. You wouldn't miss very many fairways if you hit an iron off the tee and, you know, pitching wedge from the red tees. Yeah, that's but, you know, to build the confidence, to get things going in the right direction, that can be the correct move on the golf course. Love the golf analogy there from you. But let's get further into this game. Alabama, I think their defensive talent is pretty underrated. I think their offensive talent is well established. We just have one real question, and that's Ty Simpson, who is going to be Alabama's starting quarterback in the game. I love that Ryan Grubb is back for the Crimson Tide. I think, oddly enough, Alabama is one of the more underrated, under-discussed teams of the offseason leading into this year, which is strange to say, but I think it is also fair that they're the preseason number 8 or 9 team and not inside the top 5 because they were 9-4 last year. And also, we've barely seen Ty Simpson play, and what we have seen hasn't really been that good. So give me the Florida State perspective on how confident you are the Seminoles' new defensive staff with Coach White and everybody can slow him down.
I think that they can do that. They did a really good job last year at Nebraska. They held Ohio State to like 80 yards rushing or something like that. So they've got a very good defensive staff. They got Darrell Jackson Jr. at nose guard. He'll be probably a pretty high pick. They've got a few guys in the secondary like Earl Little Jr. that are good. But like on the edge, they've got not one, but like 2 inside linebackers they've moved to pass rusher. And I'm just like, I'm not sure that – I'm not kidding. Like it's – they're
just out of necessity?
They don't have a pure edge for this. Now, when I saw that, I mean, the red flag wasn't lifted. It was catapulted to the moon. So, like, I know that they're frustrated with some players, and they're trying. Again, this is a culture move. Short-term loss, long-term gain. I get it. But Alabama is the other team for this week, and that's the only objective to discuss today. That's not going to work against Caden Proctor. It's not. It's going to be 3rd down and 2 all day, and against a loaded room of running backs, a couple of NFL linemen, minimum, probably 3, and Ryan Williams, Jeremy Bernard, Isaiah Horton, and just a cast of characters coming off the bench. Got a lot of receivers. I think they're going to put Florida State on skates by the middle of the 3rd quarter, and they'll just slowly pull away. I think 2 touchdowns was about the right margin for the point spread, and I'm not talking anybody off that ledge. I know Florida State fans they just want to get the bad taste of last year out of their mouth, and I think they'll play way better, but they're just playing the wrong team. Yeah, I like Alabama quite a bit in this game.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, that has to be discussed with this matchup, Kalen DeBoer can't have a stumble.
No, he cannot.
Mike Norvell, I think, should be given some grace because, he's locked in with the contract, so you couldn't fire him after last year. It was just one bad year. But you got to start back down at ground zero, grow it up from the roots. Okay, we get that with Florida State. Kalen DeBoer has to make the playoff this year, or 2026 is going to be playoff or you're fired. And if you go on the road where you're a 2-touchdown favorite, justifiably so, with the roster gaps that I think exist between these two teams, and you've got your coordinators back, Ryan Grubb returning and Kane Womack still there as defensive coordinator, I think that this needs to be a game where Kalen DeBoer looks up and goes, yeah, we're not sweating here in the 4th. Like last year against Wisconsin, what was it, 42-10? Or it was something like that. I'll look at it. It needs to be that for the Crimson Tide.
Why wouldn't it be? Florida State, 9 of their 11 offensive starters, I believe, will be transfers. It's a lot of parts trying to work together. And you got 2 new coordinators. You got 2 new line coaches. You've got a transfer quarterback, and you're playing Bama. Like those are just not the right measurements. And I know stranger things have happened, and that's why you and I say continually, college football is the greatest sport on earth. But does it make you feel warm and fuzzy playing the Tide? No. So Alabama should be able, barring just turning the ball over and just disastrous special teams. If they're not up by 10 by middle of the 2nd quarter, I'd be a little ticked if I was their staff. Now, they may not admit it that publicly, but they know they're a lot better. Florida State knows they're a lot better, too. If you go watch Norvell's press conference, we're just worried about us. All those comments, he just stayed away from – it was well done, but I'm not a fool either. He knows what he's doing. They don't have anywhere near the roster that Alabama does. They don't. So they've got to find a way to win the turnover battle by at minimum 2. That's hard.
Yeah.
Minimum 2.
When a coach goes to the podium, is asked about the other team, and doesn't want to talk about them, that is code for we just want to find something good to take into next week to more winnable games. Bama is an SEC and national title contender. Florida State, I think, would be happy to make a bowl game this year. That'd be a tremendous success, in my view. I don't think they're actually doing that, by the way, because I'm pretty down on them. They're not recruiting the high school ranks the way that I think they should. It hasn't been all bad, but it's just I don't know. I've got questions after they were literally the worst preseason top 10 team in the history of college football. But the interesting thing about this game, Brian, is Ty Simpson's going to be under a microscope, a big microscope here. They're not going to lean on the running game. That's not what Kalen DeBoer likes to do. That's not what Ryan Grubb likes to do. If you want to have one knock on Ryan Grubb as an OC, he's never constructed a truly elite run game or even a super balanced offense. They run enough, to keep a defense honest, but they're all about the passing game. The weapons are there. The offensive line is going to be there. If Ty Simpson looks bad in this game when he's going into his 4th year of college football, there are going to be some serious questions about the guy that's trying to lead Alabama to the promised land.
I think that he's a really good coordinator, but I don't know anything about Ty Simpson because he's never been in a meaningful snap as far as I'm concerned. So now he's the guy, and we have no idea if he's not the guy, who even the second player is going to be. You got a true freshman that was an All-American high school player, and another kid.
Keelan Russell, yeah.
And I mean, the other kid's really talented, but he's barely played either. And we don't know much about him. So Ty Simpson's you could argue Ty has as much pressure as any quarterback in the country because you're right. Their roster, if everything fell just right, they could be the national title game. If everything just fell, because Caden Proctor is going to be the first tackle off the board. That's a great starting point. Quay Russaw, James Smith, like they got just Lawson, inside linebacker. They're loaded in the secondary. Oh, yeah, Ryan Williams got. They have all kinds of things going right. But if you're just, Jag plus at quarterback, that's not going to get it done in today's era. You got to score. I'm really anxious to see what he looks like. Florida State will have some guys. James Williams, Joe Jackson Jr., they got a lot of veterans in the front seven. They're going to apply some pressure. How does he handle that? I don't think Florida State's going to beat him, but he's going to get hit. How does he take that? That might be the biggest thing from this game just nationally to look at. But for the Noles, they'll be better, but they're not going to beat Alabama.
You got a game prediction here? I'm going to go Bama 31-13.
I'm going to go 38-17.
38-17. So we both love the Tide. Notably, we have never both agreed on a double-digit favorite involving a Florida State matchup going into the first game of the year for both teams. That's definitely never happened before, and no chaos could possibly ensue. Brian Smith, Locked on Seminoles, great as always. Nebraska thoughts on the Cornhuskers and more. What happened to Duke? My Blue Devils. Oh my goodness, it was ugly. First, this episode brought to you by Upside. Locked on college football fans, are you still paying full price for gas? Stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use my limited time promo code FOOTBALL, all caps, one word, and get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You can make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas you already needed. At first, you might think it's too good to be true, but it's totally legit. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commutes, and you can too. So you can cash out anytime to your bank account or PayPal or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. It's all there for you. Don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now using my limited time promo code FOOTBALL for a limited 25 cent per gallon bonus. That's promo code FOOTBALL. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. Check out the Upside app and start saving today. Oh, Nebraska was so close to pulling a Nebraska, and then they didn't. They beat Cincinnati. The Bearcats cover, which was my prediction. Even though I thought it was a home game for Cincinnati, I forgot we did this neutral site nonsense. Let's be real. That was a home game for Nebraska. The crowd was on fire at Arrowhead Stadium, and I tell you what, I thought the Bearcats were going to break Nebraska's heart again. Brendan Sorsby's driving right down the field. He's using his legs. He's starting to hit some throws. He picks up the 4th and 7. When that ball was in the air, Nebraska fans had to have had many years and countless games of PTSD swell right back up into their chest. Oh no, here we go. We're going to be losing in the final minute. And then they get the interception to seal the game. So Nebraska is 1-0. That's a really important win. And this is not a win that I think you shrug off for a couple of reasons and say, oh, it's just Cincinnati. Oh, it's just a Big 12 team. No, I think Cincinnati's actually kind of underrated in the Big 12. Brendan Sorsby is a really good runner. He's got a good arm, not always consistent as a passer, but we saw glimpses in this particular game against a good Nebraska defense. By the way, just wanted to note an offseason move that the Cornhuskers made. They grabbed former 5-star Missouri commit Williams Nwaneri, who was in Columbia for 1 year. He is now with Nebraska, 6 tackles, half tackle for loss, and a pass deflection. Just one of the guys that I thought had a really good game for the Nebraska front four. But I think that the Cornhuskers getting this win is almost more a sigh of relief than, oh my gosh, let's start the hype train. But Nebraska winning a one-possession game. We can't just look past that. You can't look at Nebraska. I don't care if it's in the Matt Rule era, the Scott Frost era, the Mike Riley era. This has been a program issue. I don't know if there is a more cursed fan base in one-possession games than the Nebraska Cornhuskers. I haven't seen it. I have not seen it exist in any sport, quite frankly, when you get in these tight contests. So going out there, when you have a team that some people are saying, you can go make the college football playoff because you have a favorable schedule, you couldn't drop this game and do that. And frankly, if you had dropped this game, it probably would have been indicative of, yeah, we're a 7-8 win team instead of a 9-10 win team. 9-10 win puts you in the playoff discussion. 7-8 win, hey, we're good, but we're not anywhere close to the college football playoff. So that stays alive for Nebraska here with a non-conference win over Cincinnati. And look, them's the breaks that this went from being a true road game to being a neutral site home game for Nebraska, but you can only play what's right in front of you. They went out, they won the game, they got it done. So winning in those moments, the defense coming up with the big play, I wondered about Nebraska's defense. They lost their defense coordinator to Florida State. There's a reason he got hired. He was darn good. I watched this Nebraska defense, and Matt Rule's just coaching them up really well on that side of the ball. I think that he has got his fingerprints all over that entire defense, and they played really well, and they won them the game. And so that's the really, really good news for Nebraska, or the first piece I want to look at. The second piece is Dylan Raiola, who at times last year looked like, what is it? Yes, a true freshman, because he was, wait for it, a true freshman. Well, now he's a little bit more experienced, and in this game, I loved his approach. Nebraska wanted to run the ball, and I think Emmett Johnson is great. Get to know his name at running back, Isaiah Hunter, the Cal transfer, another big offseason move that Nebraska was able to get in the transfer portal, had a touchdown reception. Dane Key had a touchdown reception as well. Raiola finishes the game 33 of 42, 243 yards, and 2 touchdowns. What I loved about this game from Dylan Raiola was the fact that he was able to just take what was there. He didn't force the issue. He almost fumbled once. Cincinnati had him stripped. He got a fortunate bounce and got back on top of it. But the fumbling was the only moment where I felt like Dylan Raiola was really putting the ball into harm's way. Like, for him to go out there, this is not, a bonkers stat line. 33 completions and only 243 yards. Yeah, he was kind of a check down merchant in this game. I am okay with that. It is game one. You're playing a pretty good looking Cincinnati team. I was impressed with the Bearcats. I thought they'd be solid, respectable. I thought they'd cover. They did. But frankly, I watched them and went, boy, I don't know if I'm not sure why that can't be a bowl team in the Big 12. They could also go 3-9 in the Big 12. Last year, Oklahoma State beat Arkansas in the almighty SEC and then proceeded to, well, we all remember what happened there. They end the year 3-9. So I think that this is a nice win for Nebraska, but for Raiola in game one, when you're working in some new pieces, to have been good situationally, to make the right decisions. I forget who the analyst was with Mark Jones, the play-by-play announcer on the broadcast. He was making the point correctly that there were plays in this game Dylan Raiola made that are not going to show up on the stat sheet, but were really important. Certain scrambles, certain throwaways, certain checkdowns. He just did a good job of identifying the coverage Cincinnati was in. And every time it felt like Cincinnati had a soft corner, a free release, he was exploiting it. And he's saying, you want to give me 7 yards? Fine. I don't need to force the ball downfield into double coverage. I just need to not lose this game. That's what Dylan Raiola did. And guess what? There's that old expression, I hate losing more than I want to win. Well, in this instance, not losing the game and winning the game, same thing. It's the same end result. That's what matters most at the end of the day. So this is a really good start for Nebraska. I like what I saw from Raiola. I think the downfield shots will be there. I think they've got some players. Isaiah Hunter's a good player. Former 4-star wide receiver. Like he can become a real dude for Nebraska on the outside. And I'm sure Dana Holgorsen wants to see him continue to progress and take more downfield shots as the season goes along. But it's week one. It's a Thursday night on week one, and Dylan Raiola just goes out there and makes the plays to win the game. And the next time Nebraska is going to be tested is September 20th because they have Akron next week. They have a long layoff, of course, since this game was played on Thursday. Then they play Houston Christian. Neither one of those games are going to be a challenge for the Cornhuskers. So this is probably the last time I talk about Nebraska for an entire segment until September 20th. But that game against Michigan, Sharon Moore is not going to be coaching that game. The Wolverines better look out. They better look out because when you put this win on your resume and you're going to stack up 2 more, Nebraska is going to be feeling really, really good. I think they'll continue to tweak the offense. The defense, I think we can just establish, is going to be good regardless of who's calling the defensive plays. And I think that they just did a good job of finding a way to win the game, because this is such a sign of growth for Nebraska. It's a huge sign of growth. This is a game they lost. I watched that ball from Brendan Sorsby go up in the air towards the end zone and thought, oh my gosh, Nebraska is going to Nebraska this harder than they have ever Nebraska'd in their entire life. And then they didn't. So props to Nebraska. I want to touch on Duke. They were tied with Elon 10-10 at the half. They won the game 45-17. Duke better figure it out. You can't. They've got Tulane up next. I believe that game is next week. Let me double check that one really quick, because I've talked about Duke a pretty good amount this offseason. I like Duke. I like Manny Diaz. I think they've done a lot of really good things. And I mean, just in the 1 year that he's been there, they did a lot of really good things. But Duke was messing around with Elon at the half. No, they have Illinois and then Tulane. Illinois, number 12 in the country, who's taking on Western Illinois tonight. They're going to smoke the Leathernecks. Then they go to Durham to play Duke. Duke better step it up. Week 1 does not define your season. But boy, there are adjustments that need to be made. 10-10 at the half with Elon. You can't be doing that with Illinois. Now with Illinois and at Tulane. Duke doesn't want to mess around with those two games. So I didn't love what I was seeing there from Duke. Darian Mensah got settled down a little bit. The Oklahoma transfer at wide receiver looked really good. Some things to like in the second half. The first half, not so much. But Nebraska, feeling good. Duke, not as much. Wisconsin, yikes. Yikes, Wisconsin. I mean, they won, but that's not looking good. I'm not dunking on Wisconsin to end today's show. We'll end with optimism. Nebraska did what they needed to do. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.